What's up, fam? Extraordinary Life with Elijah. And today, Erica is my extra, and I am the ordinary. Erica, you delightful chap. I can't say enough good things about you, friend. The ways that you encourage me, that you build me up, that you validate me, that you challenge me, that you press me on towards deeper things in God. All of the gifts that God has imparted to me through you connect me to Him in a deeper way, and I thank God for you. Friends, back in Thanksgiving of 2021, Erica came out to Montana to visit, stayed a little bit at our house, and then got to go with me to visit my family, extended family in Billings, Montana, and have a family Thanksgiving together. As a result of us hanging out, I shared with her as much as I could, not all, but as much as I could about reproductive respiration and its reality. And she's one of the very first people that I have ever got to share my paradigm with, who, after a matter of 2 or 3 days, was spitting back thoughts and insights that were constrained and flowing out of the paradigm that I had given her with such accuracy and such ease that it was so refreshing to be able to be in that space and talk about the realities of God in a language that's very familiar to myself. As a result of her then heading back home, she sent me a number of texts just shortly after the beginning of the new year and said, I've been spending time with your paradigm, I've been spending time with the graphs and exercising some calculus on it, and there's some really interesting patterns that are coming out of this graph. I don't know if you knew this, but each one of your iterations of generational growth and momentum is growing such that it's 3 times the previous generation. Now, when she said that, I remember texting back like, wow, that's really cool. Like, how are you getting those things? Like, are you sure? And it was flowing from a space where I had for years attempted to figure out the areas of the individual generational iterations and could never find an exact pattern, but that she threw back and said, it's exactly 3. I took her at her word and then spent from the beginning of January of 2022 until now that I tried to figure out how it was. I was using all of the mathing skills that I have, definitely not calculus skills, and I tried so hard until finally God just said, stop your striving. I did stop, and then He told me the answer in terms so simple that even my kids can count it with their pudgy little innocent fingers. Now, I was writing about something totally different. I was not even related. And Jesus and I were just rolling. And out of the blue, He speaks to me, gives me the proof of how each generational iteration is 3 times the previous. No math at all. And it's so simple. It was silly. Now let me show you how it works. Now, if you go around the outside of generation 1, so right here is the starting point of the whole graph, but this whole first circle is the first iteration of generational leadership and destiny in God. If we go around the outside of that hexagon, draw it in here real quick, you'll see that this hexagon is the portion that rotates upwards to create the next iteration of the next generation. This outside portion of the expression of generation 1, this outside isosceles triangle, rotates outward along this arc to this point on the outside and becomes the bounding edge outwards of the next iteration. So what is foundational in one generation is passed along to the next as inheritance and forward momentum. But as God pointed it out to me, that as it rotates upwards around that portion, stands up here, it literally slides immediately over and is the exact same size as the central portion of the next generation's generational iteration. Now, as you look at that expression, we're gonna go with the second generation's expression, so it's a little bit bigger to work with. But if you go around the outside of that generational expression, there's so much language to be able to explain all of this. I'm just gonna keep it fairly simple so it doesn't get too long. But the expression of this generational iteration rotated around this bottom point, then slides over to become the next generation's iteration in generation 3 now. Now, if you look at this first generation, these are both the same hexagons. If you draw along this outside edge here, along this side edge here, upwards to here, we draw along here, downwards to here, can be a couple seconds of drawing here, and then in through this middle portion, if we draw the lines in through the middle here, up through there, and up through here, we have isosceles or equilateral triangles that are similar all the way around. And if you go to the outside of the hexagon, you can see that these outside remaining portions are equilateral triangles that are cut in half and set base to base. So these are the exact same size as all of the inner triangles. So if you go from there, then it's just simple trigonometry. And then if you go around from then and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, quod erat demonstrandum, we have this is 1/3 of the next generation. Now, it's so awesome then that every revelation of God that he gives us, that the next answer becomes the basis of our next realm of questions. That it's never about mastery, it's about mystery. What God reveals to us in times of manifest revelation then become the next basis of our questioning of what comes after that. And so from there, realizing that each generation is 3 times the portion of the next generation. Not kind of, it's exact. Each, as God gave me this graph, that each generation produces 3 times what the previous generation did. That as that pattern then develops, that along that line then, the first generation we can say is 1/3, remove the third, but say 1/3, and the next one, that the first generation is 1/3 of the second generation, but then it's only 1/9 of the next generation, 1/27th, so on and so forth. So we can say that it's 1, and then the next generation we can say is 3, we can say is 9, is 27, so on and so forth. So the question then I posed back to Erica, that I could see that there was this growing pattern that was moving forward, such that when I calculated those all out and I started doing it by longhand, and I started having so many errors at the 25th generation, I decided to stop. But that I saw that from generation 1, that generation 1 was the full expression of the good works that God had for them to do. That they were given a talent, one talent, and that they went after it with everything that they had and were faithful. And as a result, the next generation who received the inheritance of faithfulness from their parents produced 3 times what their parents produced. And that after that, that as they pressed on, that then the next generation, the 3rd generation, the amount over what the previous generations were summed together. So the summation of generation 1 and generation 2 summed together, passed along to generation 3 as an inheritance then, that generation 3 then was 2.25 times bigger. How fascinating. and calculated it for generation 4, which was 2.077, so on and so forth, so that by the time I got to generation 7, it was 2.00275. And so I kept calculating out the pattern, moving outwards and outwards until I got to the 25th generation. When I got to the 25th generation, I saw a very solid pattern that we were progressing closer and closer and closer to exactly 2. Out of that, then God spoke to me and said, by faith, the faith reasoning is that by the 250th generation, that it would be approaching closer and closer to exactly 2, but that it would always be 2 times more plus 1. Now, I contacted Erica to see if she would be able to do that math. She said, yes, but I'm gonna have to write a program. I have to dust off my Python skills, write up a program, because that's gonna be a really big number. And I'll have to write a computer program for you to calculate that. She got back to me within like an hour or 2 and said, well, as we approach 250, it's exactly 2. Now, when she said it, I received it. I trusted her in that. But in my spirit, by faith, I said, could you please check and see again if it's a number that is just above 2? It's 2 and just a little bit more. So let me get back with you. Let me see what I can get my computer to do. The number was so big, the line of zeros was so big that her computer just rounded it off and said, for all parts and purposes, that is exactly 2. But got a text back and said that it's 2 and that there is 40 zeros after the decimal place and then a 1. Friends, I cannot tell you how encouraging that is to my heart. That out of that, then, God has spoken this to me. That David says in Psalm 119, 111, maybe one of the longest references ever, 119, 111. It sounds like an address or a zip code. But that David says that all of the testimonies of the Lord are his inheritance forever. Elsewhere, it says that he has been given more understanding than his teachers because he has instructed himself in the Lord's testimonies. Now, what God has done in me, in and through this, is the realization that from the beginning of time, when God first said, let there be light, all of his testimonies in all of the history of man, clear until now at Sunday, July 3rd, 2022, that the full record of all of the testimonies of God are my inheritance, that I've received them as a gift, as if they were mine, and that the full momentum of God's faithfulness to carry out his own purposes in the earth are at my back, giving me forward momentum into everything then that God has for me to do in the fullness of my faith's expression in what he's given me to do. It's from this context then that Jesus' words come to me, and that he says prophetically, Elijah, you will do the works that I have been doing, and you will do greater. It will be my life replicated plus 1. It has to be just that much, because Jesus's words are true. Now, I think the beautiful discovery for me is I have no idea what the pictures are that I'm drawing with God, that he just gives me pictures to draw. I draw the pictures, and then I discover later what it was that I was drawing with him. I did not work that kind of complexity into my silly scratchings of a graph, but that as I'm faithful with God, out of the overflow of what he's given me to do, that Jesus apportions grace to us according to the measure that he foresees, by his sovereign power, as I am with him and I exercise my gifts out of the overflow of the faith and the grace that he has given me to please my Father's heart, to just draw him pictures that bring him joy. The pictures that I draw for him while I'm waiting for him to come and take me away to be with him to where he is. Like, Daddy, I drew you this picture. Great, son, what is that? And I have to explain it to him. But out of the overflow of the exercise of the gifts that God has given me to please his heart, that as I exercise those gifts, that I discover that I have grace at my back with the momentum of the fullness of my Father's testimonies imparted to me as a free gift of inheritance that establish that I will do the works of Jesus out of the anointing that he received without measure, that I will do those works plus one. Fam, I don't know where you're at in your life right now. I don't know what obstacles are in your way that are saying the abundant life of Christ, the full expression of the abundant life of Christ that he died and rose again to impart to you, that there's giants in that inheritance that Jesus has purchased for you by his blood. And I don't know what obstacle illusion exists in that place that's shouting at you and lying to you that you cannot break into the fullness, to the borders of the abundant life that Jesus has for you. But my declaration to you is that there is more than enough. There is more than sufficient grace and momentum at your back to break you through into the fullest expression of Jesus's life represented in you plus one. Whatever the calculations are of Satan's supercomputer written in a code of Python has come to you to say, did God really say? Is it really that good? Is he really that for you? Is he really that behind you? Is he really that for you? That is calling those things into question. I want to tell you, out of the overflow of his grace and his spirit that is within me, that I am exercising to the fullest ability that I know how to impart grace to you to know God has oriented himself for you and with you to break you through into the fullest expression of every good work that he has predestined for you to do. If you subscribe to what I am doing, and hit the button, hit it and then get it. Hit the bell as well so that you get notified with the new content. And if you love this video, you didn't just like it, then just hit that thumbs down button for me. Oh, bless my heart to no extent. Please hit the thumbs down button. All of the thumb downs buttons are my favorite. Hit it. I pray blessings on your day. I love you guys lots, and I will see you in the next video.